And recording just started. Powerful. What is yours?
Yeah, I just pasted the link to the files that Jaya created from his demo in the chat. It's this Google Drive link. If you go there, you'll see Jaya created his Python model in Colab, but then exported all of his model files to to TFJS, to Onyx, to H5, and that's what we are trying to import into a completely new environment that is observable in our case. I mean, as long as we can get it to work in observable, it should in theory work in the browser or on Node or any environment that runs JavaScript for that matter. So these are the files that I'm using right now. Not explicitly, because we found some issues last time with using Drive directly, so we moved them to GitHub. Let me show you. Let me share the URL for that. So yeah, it's on the Cloud4Pio GitHub. This is the model file, and there's another weights file that I use. That's the binary. I mean, yeah, I don't explicitly use it because TensorFlow.js knows to load it from the URL that it downloaded the model from. So basically, once it's gotten the model.json file, it replaces this with the weights file, and that's how the model is generated. You see the model summary here. Yeah, this is a reproduction of the original Linux model, so it should be fairly simple. And this is something we were discussing last time, how to get the weights. There's of course a function to do that. The model.getWeights returns the weights of every layer, so we just index, define the index of the layer we want to see. The other layers are slightly fairly larger, so I'm just showing the weights of the final layer. So this is the final activation layer. This is what where the prediction comes from. If I change this to say maybe 5, you see that there's 120 over here, which is this layer, I think. I don't know, but yeah, it's one of those layers.
It's the third from the last one.
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh, Jonas, you pasted the entire agenda.
I know, sorry, I just wanted to put one link. Sorry about that. Just ignore it.
But this notebook is open. I'll share the link. Sorry.
I'm putting the link there. It's already there.
Oh, perfect. So yeah, you should be able to play around with it. And we just write out on an image from the dataset that Jaya trained on. This is the same. This is an MNIST image, and it isn't exactly what we wanted to do. If people remember, we were trying to get the HDF5 file to work. Maybe we can try that today. But yeah, this is an original MNIST image, and we see that it works well enough. And then we move on to this is something that I wanted to try, so that we make a distinction between what the Colab like environments are supposed to do, which is maybe design the model or at least train the model in a way that it is usable elsewhere. And then we based on the speciality of the environment, we employ the model to do different what the environment is specialized to do, basically. So that's a redundant statement, but because we know JavaScript is meant to be interactive, because it supports a bunch of functions that allow for very user-friendly interfaces. I just thought maybe it's a good idea to try this out, where we can basically write the number and we see what the model thinks of it. If I now change this to, let's see if the model, it's not bad. And this is the change I made from last time. The model is now changing its prediction in real time. If you can see the predicted value at the bottom, you'll see it changes as I maybe it's done. But if I start drawing something, you'll see it change intermittently. And the model is by no means perfect. There's also a bunch of pre-processing that goes into converting this canvas into a 28 by 28 image. I can show you that. Yeah, I have to resize it basically. So what you see here is not exactly what the model says. It's a very scaled down version of this. So yeah, I mean, don't blame the model too much for it. I'm probably not doing the best job. But that is.
I'm guessing if you extend the little leg of the 4, so the horizontal line a little bit.
The
middle, no, the middle line. Not the other, the horizontal one, not the vertical one. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because it suddenly pops up in the smaller size version.
Probably. Yep. So yeah, that's, and maybe if I do this, it goes to a 9. No, it doesn't.
Some people do 4 like.
Yeah, true. But yeah, so this is where like I hope JavaScript shines, and we see why we want to why we like cross-platform interoperability, because like each platform has its own pros and cons, and with JavaScript we have the ability to let the users or even the domain experts actually use the model and see what it does. This is another form of interpretability, at least in my mind, where you see what the model does in real time. This is of course not possible for all models, but it still allows you to know what, at least to get a feel for what the model sees and how it changes based on the input.
If I want to make a comment here, because I think it touches on old conversations when we started going this way. Notice that if the model was being deployed on the server side, each little movement by Praful's mouse would be a call to an API, and it would be some cost. Whereas because it's running on the client side, there are no costs associated with this level of interactivity at all.
Yep.
Another thing you see is that with the ability to easily play with the signal, you suddenly realize what these conversations about novelty indexes mean. For example, if Praful writes a well-defined number, but in a corner of the panel, the neural network won't be prepared for this. And the reason is that the neural network never saw a 2 written on the upper right-hand corner of the panel. You know, the numbers are well framed. And you could say, well, but that just means I need to fix my code. But even before worrying about fixing the code, this means that this is a novel data element, what we are looking at. And it's not clear to our minds that 3, 2, 6, and 7 are novel, but the way they are displayed is novel. So a model that is trained for a certain type of formatting of the input needs to be able to reflect the fact that it's looking at something that is formatted differently, which is something we currently don't usually give much thought.
Yep. And this basically allows for like alpha testing or beta testing of the model. That is in a way, at least like in my use case, for example, in EpiPath, having interactivity with the model would be a much better measure of how the model works. For example, when I train models and I just like throw statistics at people when we meet, it doesn't make the best impact. Like people don't, like, firstly they shouldn't believe me, and they don't see the performance reflected in a lot of their work. Maybe something like this is at least, again, this is like I'm thinking specifically in terms of EpiPath, where I have models that are at least very efficient when loaded onto the browser. Maybe we can think of like measures like these that allow for the model to be understandable in a way.
Hey, Praful.
Yeah.
I'd really would love to see the 10 softmax values for this kind of a thing, because that may give you some input into how novel the what's it called, the value is.
You got it. Let's see. That does it. Still, oh, I'm doing the 0, right? The novelty, would it?
Yeah, Daniel is right. And Daniel, the method's name is called entropy-based method, and it's limited in its effectiveness, but in some cases you can figure out by just looking at the distribution of the output.
I just think having figured it out is not enough. Like we need one number that says this is novel, not novel.
Yeah. But it's a decent baseline of what Daniel is talking about, that if the entropy is high, that means that generally there is no consensus, and in that case that no one class dominates.
But
so it's a decent.
What if there is a region where there's just no consensus? Like, for instance, the way to write 1 or 4 varies between Americans and Europeans, for example. And so there will be no consensus. You would get high entropy in that region, but there will be nothing novel about this confusion. It's just inherent to the signal.
But no matter how you wrote your 4, whether you wrote it European or you wrote it American, it's going to be very high for the 4 category. The softmax output. But what we're talking about is if you if you're flipping a coin because you have no idea what this number is.
Okay, so I have a different example, Daniel. Let's say I have a training data that for some range in the signals, and we have some examples of this actually in the paper, it's just random. It is just random, that's the way it is. And so the neural network will be basically tossing the coin just the same way that the signal generation did. So the fact that it's high entropy doesn't mean it's novel. So when I'm saying that we need a measure of novelty, is a measure where the input, the way it is presented, it was not present in the training data. It's a very, very simple question. This is just not part of the training domain of the model. You see what I mean, Daniel?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. What I was talking about are cases where the model just cannot predict because either it was novel or just there's too much conflict between all the different classes.
But if it's not novel, you can study that in the ROC curve and trust that analysis. Now, if it is novel, it's just confusing us. We're basically using a model trained on a piece of data to make predictions on an unrelated or sufficiently unrelated new observation. I know it sounds like I'm obsessed with this novelty measure.
No, actually, I completely agree with you, but I think in that case, you really have to look at distributions of your inputs.
Exactly, weight distributions of inputs, yep. And I think we actually have some sort of conclusion on this conversation. Jay, if you want to interject, please do, because me and Jay, we went back and forth on this for almost a year. And I think now we have some, I guess, agreement or convergence along this idea that any measure of attribution, let's not call it sensitivity, so we don't bring in the wrong prejudices. So any measure of attribution, so this is a vector of the inputs with regard to an output. If you measure Euclidean distance to those of the training data, you will easily identify the novelty there. The main objection to this approach is that it requires you to have at least the attribution vectors for all of the elements in the training set, which may or may not be a problem. Oh, Jay?
In my experiments, what I've realized is that the strongest determinant of this out of distribution is absolutely the right way to think about it. So the right way to think about it is k nearest neighbors. The only problem is it should not be done in the input space. It has to be done in the model space. Can I just steal the screen for a second? I know this is being recorded.
And Jay, you're welcome to use the word canonical.
Yeah. So there are two types of places where a neural network is going to fail. One is when you have high variance for a specific value of x. So there is no consensus. So this is your output prediction y, and this is your input predictor x. So for a given value of x, that's 5, you tend to not be certain about what the value of y is. It's probably because your model is not complete. It's probably because your labeling is noisy, whatever be the case. The uncertainty is stemming from the data. So in that case, a simple model like this is not going to be sufficient for you to make a prediction. So there's going to be high disagreement with your model.
Jay, I'm just trying, before we go to the epistemic If a signal is inherently noisy, the noise is part of what's being modeled. So the neural network is just fine by not being precise about the prediction because the data itself is not. So it's something that falls into the ROC side of this conversation.
Yeah, but but you still need this distance, right? This is a directly k-nearest neighbor approach. So what is the distance between this and the truth?
Oh, I see where you're heading. Okay, go ahead.
And then there is this other situation about interpolation and extrapolation. This is a very hot topic because Jan LeCun just published a paper yesterday. It's very controversial, but essentially you have no examples like this. And so Jan LeCun's point is that all problems have, all models in high dimensional data have this. So that's Jonas, exactly what you're saying, where this combination of values does not exist in your data set. So that falls under epistemic. Your model, your neural network is still forced to define in that entire space. So, but there was no evidence for it at all. Again, there is a big different distance between your query and this. What I have come to realize is that you cannot solve this from the input space, you cannot solve this on the output space, but you can solve it from all of the middle layers of the neural network. So if you have the data distribution for the hidden layers, and then you ask a query and you see all the values that were fired for all of the neurons, and then you find the k-nearest neighbor between that, between the training data set distribution and your query. And that distance gives you the accurate estimation of uncertainty. But so if given an architecture, I can give you a concrete single answer. But if there is no consensus upon what model it is, for example, Proful's current method uses convolution neural networks, but it does not use max pooling. If max pooling was used, he wouldn't struggle with that problem where in the corner he wrote the number, but the model could not recognize it because there is no translational invariance in the model encoded. Had he used data augmentation, where he had in the first layer of the neural network, whatever image is obtained, if he just offset them randomly in different corners, if he scaled them differently in random corners, so you can build a neural network that anticipates it either from the data perspective or from the functional perspective. From the functional perspective, you could have solved with max pooling. From the data perspective, you could have solved with data augmentation or a combination of the two. In these cases, what I've come to realize is it's the model that contains the information of what novelty is. So this line that you see is central to that argument.
So Jeff, a procedural comment. I'd like to hear your response to this, or Proful or Daniel, of course, anyone. So when we see a model that is not behaving well, we often do this. You'd say, show me the model, show me the input, and then we see a problem and we recommend a solution. So that's the way we tend to do. I'm kind of tempted to propose that we avoid these scenarios where we impose knowledge on the solution of a problem by requesting first the quantification of the problem. That's why I keep saying that even before we fix a problem that is obvious to us, and we may or may not be right, so this being obvious is not a good criteria, we should ask for a measure of novelty. Like the very first thing of any conversation where a model is not doing what it's supposed to. And in fact, at ECG, we've heard this comment from researchers that they get so many AI models thrown at them that they don't know if they're even valid for the data they have. And we still don't answer this question. We don't tell them. So I know we are repeating an old conversation, Jaya, but if you have any new responses to this, does this make sense that the first thing is a measure of novelty and only later suggestions of fixes?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Yeah, all of my models have a measure of uncertainty now.
Of novelty or just uncertainty?
Uncertainty. Novelty has to be defined across models.
Yep.
Which is.
It couldn't have.
So Jay, let me see if I understand what you were saying, and this may help also with what Jonas was saying. Is if we have somewhat of a training set, and it may not be the training set that was actually used to build the model, but maybe it was tuning or something. Can we run it, take a look at the weights that we get in every node, and then compare the distribution to see where a particular example comes and falls into the different weights?
That's exactly.
So that if you a few weights that are way off target that can tell us we've never seen this before.
That's exactly it,
Absolutely.
Daniel. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But Daniel, let me ask you this. You have solved the same problem using two different architectures. One, you've used ResNets, and in the other, you used traditional multi-layered perceptrons. How do I normalize for these two? But your answer is absolutely right.
Most classification only takes place in the last couple layers.
I don't think that's true. A lot of classification happens in the early layers. Like convolution neural network has made its decision a lot before the penultimate layer. My impulse was exactly like what you said. The final decision is ultimately made by the final layer, or the penultimate layer, but that's not true. What I've realized is that in some cases the decision is made in the first few layers. In some cases it leaves it to the last layer. So you need to account for all of them.
I have an hypothesis about this. The hypothesis could be true or false. Is that whatever way you choose to represent your data in a canonical space, remember the canonical, that's the word I want you to bring to the conversation. So a canonical space is a space where things that are alike, they are close together. That's just what it is. Yeah. So nothing too complicated. And we could go after it by many ways, going sharply, going weights, going whatever. So my hypothesis is that whichever way you go about, if you then measure Euclidean, even something as simple as Euclidean distances on that transformed space, you'll be able to measure novelty because you're further away from your next neighbor than the typical member of the training set is further away from its own neighbor. So it's a ratio, it's an F statistic, whatever, but it should come to the same measurement of novelty regardless of the method, as long as the projection is canonical.
I agree. The canonical representation plus the immediate edges after it is sufficient to solve the novelty index problem. So, for example, this would solve the problem that Praful was describing, where he was trying to draw a number in the corner. This was translational invariance, and he could have solved it using max pooling. He could have solved it using data augmentation. At this point, I don't care. Once he has done all of those steps, the layer right after it has that canonical representation. So that's sufficient for me to solve it. My difficulty has only been that I don't know the architecture beforehand when I'm comparing models. But if I knew where that canonical representation was, then it's just a k-nearest neighbor problem.
I have a proposal that NMIST seems to be a good playground for all of us. We could now approach this problem and try to project our solutions in the NMIST sort of scenario and use Praful's scribbling pad as a place to test it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, no, I'm very excited about this.
You already know this, but for the numbers problem, I've already solved them. I just need to figure out a way to put that in JavaScript, but we can interact with them and figure out what are the limitations of the different approaches. But what Daniel is describing, that's my baseline. And it's a pretty effective one.
Praful, we stole your show. So there are a couple of things from your presentation that you overlooked because you went over it before. One of them is the HF5 conversation. Where does it stand after your week of interactive experimentation? Do you use it at all or ignore it at all completely?
I can. So I've been playing around with it. Oh, it's in a different notebook. Sorry, just before I get to that, this will bother me to no end. Does anyone know how to display this as an object in Markdown?
Yeah. You could JSON parse it, right?
If I parse it, I think it'll be object. I mean, it's an object anyways. If I do this, I think it'll be object. So it is an object. I mean, there's I wanted to show like this. How do I do that? Does anyone know?
Could you go back just to the string version? Oh. Oh, I see. If you transform it to an array, no, it would work. Never mind. Well, you could transform it to an array, right? You ask for all the keys.
I want to show the label as well. So yeah, this is the activation of 1, this is the activation of 2, and so on.
Can you copy paste this just into the console of the browser just by opening here. Just copy paste.
The Markdown won't work.
No, if you just copy the activations, so the string activation, so we have the activations.
Into the browser console, you mean? Sure.
Just to make sure. Okay, so there it's all good. It's well formatted.
Praful, I think if you add a new line outside the markdown and if you just put activation, won't it print the object?
It will, but I mean, I won't have the activations word there.
Oh, just underneath it. So you will still have the activations followed by a. Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a hack, but yeah, it'll show up as a variable.
Oh, that does it.
Yeah, I mean, if you know these are the activations, then okay. But yeah, let's not waste too much time there. I'll check it out. I was able to get the HDF5. I mean, I was able to kind of understand how the HDF5 file is structured. So I have. Let me show you. This is a different notebook. I'm using. So this is the other model loading method. Now I'm using Google's the Google Drive directly in Observable, so I won't be able to make this public. But so I have the Onyx model that Jaya created on Google Drive. I've loaded it inside the Observable notebook. I'm using it here. Let me show you where I did it. Yeah, there it is. This is Onyx. You see, I'm requiring Onyx runtime Z, and I create a session, which is like typical of these libraries. I use the Google. I use the file from Google, and I create a session which is here. So if I open it, I define. So this is something that I can define in Onyx. I think TensorFlow kind of infers it, but I can replace the WebGL with WASM with CPU, and it still works. And yeah, and I haven't used the Onyx, but just to focus on the.
I have to apologize. I missed the point where you loaded the library. What library is this?
This is Onyx. Yeah, I mean, I was just. I mean, these are just experiments that I was running. I was trying for Onyx. I have the Onyx model, and I was trying to use it in Onyx. Use the HDF5 file in Onyx. But yeah, I'll come to that. I have loaded the HDF5 file using the JS5 library we discussed last time, and I can see that the values are accessible now. So yeah, I had to kind of understand how they were structured. But yeah, you see these are the X values, these are the Y values. We have 10,000 Y values. Hope that's right. And these are the pixel values. I need to reshape them to like create 28 by 28 subarrays, I think.
So you have 784?
Yeah, 7,840,000. Yeah.
No, but you have 10,000 outputs, right? So you take 10,000
so that's,
by this. Okay.
28 times 10,000. I'm thinking. Yep.
And each tile is 784 pixels total. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah. So it's every image is 28 by 28, and there are 10,000 of those.
Got it.
We have 7,840,000 pixels, or not pixel intensities. And yeah, we have those. I need to reshape them, but yeah, it's accessible. You can see this is where I get the HDF5 file from. This is again, I've loaded it from Google Drive directly. I want to stick as much as possible to this model as I described last time. Moving it to GitHub seems yeah, it seems unnecessary to me, and it seems like it's breaking the flow. But it's I mean it's fine.
Praful, I have a software engineering question.
Yeah.
So you've done something here that many of us are itching to play with, but you say, well, I can't share it with you because this has a service account for my Google Drive. Yep. And we've had this conversation before. I'm wondering if it helps here, that we should make an effort to putting the link in the text box to move towards to methods to engage cloud assets. In that case, you would be able to share the observable with all of us, but only those of us with permission to the data. See, it's looking for your box session, didn't find it, you have to log in, or actually log out, then log in, etc. So you know this conversation, right?
Yeah.
So should we move as a way to engage our cloud middle layers, or should we rely on observables file service?
No, so that depends, I think, on how you see observable, James. I see it as a prototyping environment, but if you want to make a deliverable out of your prototype, then this makes a lot of sense. In my case, I would rather, I would rather create a web app out of it to make it more widely shareable. Or I'm not sure if I still need to think through my motivations for web app focused deployability, but it feels to me the more natural mode of delivery and the more like computationally supported.
Why not both?
You could do both, but then you have to you have to make sure your library works
on both
the
places.
same.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, you're working in private with no what is it? Cookies, right? That's why it's not logging in.
Oh, at Box? No, I'm not logged in this browser, I think. I don't think I'm logged in here either, but I might be. No, okay.
No, it's
yeah, it's the
cookie thing.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not logged in here, but I could. But yeah, if I mean, if for example you're writing a paper, a distill-like paper in a global, this makes a lot of sense to me. But again, maybe I might try this. No, I won't. Not yet. I was thinking I might try this for the ImageBox 3 notebook, but I'm not sure if it will be.
I like your answer, Prof. It depends how much of a deliverable one thinks observable is.
Yeah.
I've noticed in papers it helps to have both. For instance, for the PLCO paper, we have both the web application and the observable notebook and the supplementary information.
True. And that's why that's why I look at it mostly as a prototyping environment.
There you are. You're in.
Yeah, and now I can of course get any file I want. But let me show you. I mean, yeah, there's nothing to show really. But in my mind, if it's supporting a paper, this does well enough. It probably doesn't work. I made a couple of changes. It doesn't, but yeah, you get the idea. It's the same basic thing that this thing works in observable directly without any refactoring of the code.
Yeah.
But it's more visible. The code is more visible. So this is very useful as a documentation or as you said a supporting argument. But that in my mind translates to a prototype, not a
to push it to the edge. Eric also created custom elements that he can load from both environments. Would you say no, that's just going too far?
No, custom elements in my mind, then that you're dictating how the rendering happens. I'm assuming that's what you mean by custom elements, where it is you package the entire for example, you package this image. No, not this image, but you package the image and the loading functionality, and then you deliver it somewhere else. In fact, maybe this is a better demo. You package the entire OpenCDragon viewer with the tile server bundle, and then you ship it somewhere else. But then that dictates how the rendering happens. You also then have to support options for customizability, which maybe it's easier to just give them the functionality and then let them figure out how to render the component. But I'm not sure what the correct answer is.
The reason I think this is a good use of our time, this conversation, is that you've noticed that we've all been changing our minds over time. For instance, remember Praful was completely against observable, and we don't have Lee to provoke him, but Lee would say it's not a place where you should deliver anything. But is Lee with us? If not.
I'll just clarify that point. I was against observable as a as an analysis environment. So for reasons like these, because the OAuth support, which is what we really liked from observable, because it is limited to private notebooks, I didn't see it as much of an improvement over a web app, because you have to implement this and because you have to make sure that this works in observable and browser, which I'll stress has not been the most straightforward thing to do because of the differences in observable and the normal JavaScript loading, module loading or script loading. It's a little more work than I want to do at this point, supporting both environments.
Just as a closing remark, because without Lee we can't go very far, right?
Yeah.
So what you guys are hearing, and if you have any comments, even without Lee being here, go ahead, is that when me and Praful are using observable as a place to develop the code is entirely developed outside of observable, and you're just requiring it or importing it in observable, as you could import it in your web application. And it's very different from this other approach where the descriptive statistics group at TCEG is exploring the use of observable as a place to deliver analytics. For instance, age-adjusted mortality, for example. It's something they'll do on the fly after pulling the data from an API call. So I see quite a few DevOps in the list. We have the same thing for all of us. I'm not sure if you guys remember. All of us in Connect and close relations. It's the same thing called an API, and then we do analytics in observable. And using observable code, not using an external library we developed. Any questions from the DevOps group? Hearing none, I just share with you the link. If you mind to click on the link just so people see the analytics argument represented, and then we wait for Lee to be back. So it's coming. So there's a question: how many participants in all of us would look like Connect participants? If you go to, this is the recruitment in real time, all the way to a few days ago. And then you have age distribution, geographic distribution, all in real time. And you have the answer to the question: how many of these would match the target population of Connect? And if you go all the way down, that's it. There's the question. And the answer is around 45%. And these are the estimates in different states. So there is no external library loaded here. The code is all embedded in the notebook.
Yeah, but this precludes the data being fair in the first place.
Yes, fair is the starting point for sure.
I
Praful, HDF5. We almost forgot. You're going to tell us about HDF5.
Yeah. We have the data. I was just about to tensorify this in Onyx, which is slightly weird, I'd say. Let me see if this works. No.
Praful, were you able to get only a subset of the data using HDF5? Like, does it internally make a range request? Like,
No.
load everything.
That might I didn't find any way using the library to do that, and I don't think it because I'm using it in observable, which loads the file anyways.
Oh,
I don't think, yeah, it's a I mean I don't want to spend too much time on it right now, but okay. it does seem like it's possible. Let me show you why I think that. So
otherwise there's no point in making a library like that.
True, and because the structure of HDF5 is such that you have these files. You have these groups in which you have data sets in which you can like store your attribute value pairs. It makes sense that you can choose one file and only that file. But I wasn't able to find an index. Like I wasn't able to find where one file started and where one file ended and another started. So I'm not sure if that index, it's similar to Jonas's VCF problem or to my tiling problem. But either way, it does seem like there must be some way to at least get to a block and then keep reading until we reach an end of file or something.
I had the same problem.
Yeah.
So I have a link to my experiments, and if you don't mind, just repeat yours. First, if you click on this link I just shared, and it's calling an external file, so it's completely fair. It comes from Figshare. There it comes. And I'm using the same NIST library, the 5 thing. And so it's coming. Yeah, there it is. If I now ask you, so anyone can click on this link. If I ask you, what is inside this file? It's very hard.
Let me see if I can find it. Domain underscore 03. I don't think this is a group, but let's see. Oh, it is. Okay. Yeah, this is one of the, is it a group or I think it's a data set.
So these are supposed to be temperature time series from NIST, from an NSF funded NEON project. So towers in the middle of the country measuring temperature. And I said, what is the temperature? I couldn't find it.
Let me see.
Ruffle, all of your data should be in that file. It's completely self-described.
So Daniel, help us out then. Can you find the temperature time series in this HDF5 file? Because I couldn't. And you can if you read it from MATLAB or some other library.
I'm sorry, where is this? Where is this? This is in.
It's the last link in the chat box, and it's pulling some NOAA data in HDF5 format.
Let's see.
I don't see the. How do you get?
Daniel, do you have experience working with HDF5 in JavaScript?
Not in JavaScript, but in R. And I'm not going to tell you it's easy.
Yeah.
But if you work with it for like a week, you start seeing the, you start to pick it up.
So just to loop you into the conversation, so what we are trying to do here is we are trying to find one model format that is common to Python, JavaScript, and R, and a data format that can accommodate for big data across Python, JavaScript, and R. So what we're suggesting is for the data, the model format, the competition is between saved model format and Onyx, which has a runtime for Python, R, and JavaScript. And saved model can be read from TensorFlow library. For HDF5, I think that's the only format that I can think of in big data that is supported in all the 3 languages. So my question for Praful was, can you use HDF5 without having to load the entire file? So if I give him a gigantic file, can he, you know how HDF5 works, right?
Yeah. You can. So as a matter of fact, you're not supposed to read the entire file because that's the whole idea, is that the file is super big. So what you do is you go through the, what's it called? You go through the hierarchical structure, and it's supposed to be read sort of like a what's it called? A fixed format file, but it's really one big buffer.
Absolutely, and they have a reference, reference to the memory, and that's stored in a tree's data structure. And in my opinion, that at least in Python, that's what gets loaded when you read a HDF file, the index tree. But in Praful's case, it seems like the whole file is being loaded. So I wanted to see that.
No, it's just index, Jaya. It's just the index. So that's why it's doing get domain, get group. Yeah, I don't think you're holding data.
I think you're loading the entire file, Jonas.
But it's not supposed to. It's really only supposed to read the directory structure. And I even think it's only supposed to read the directory that you are asking for.
Yeah.
Let's see if it. No, that's the case when the file is local, I think. When the file is remote, it needs to make range requests, which I'm not 100% sure was implemented, but let's confirm that. I will check if
I just saw the range.
I will also say I've never used HDF5 remotely, so there could be some other things involved in. But it certainly can't read the files themselves because they could be hundreds of gigabytes.
No, you're right. We just want to read the indexes and then pull what we need, like we do with VCFs.
No, this.
Jay, remind us, why did you rule out ZAR from this conversation? I forgot.
It's because there are only third-party support for ZAR in R, but I do believe that ZAR is well supported in JavaScript, Python, and a bunch of other languages, even Go, in fact.
Yeah, definitely, it's definitely not making a range request. There's no content range, and I mean it's a 3 megabyte file. Seems like a little large.
Do you know what's in the file? I mean, can you see? I don't know what's in this file, so I can't really.
So if you go to the array buffer, so the buffer variable, and you can ask for things like length. You can also slice it, and you can see the value.
This is the file.
Yeah.
That's variance temperature of num points in Celsius calculated over a given time range. Standard error, I know. Yeah. Again, I can post the link in the chat if anyone is wondering.
But if you go to buffer byte length, you'll find that the whole thing is there.
Yeah. I'm pretty. So this should be the same length 299392, right? I'd be very surprised if it was any different.
Yeah, buffer byte length.
Yep.
Okay, so we move on. We are 4 minutes from 11, and I wanted to leave the first detail for you, Daniel, just to show you what we listed, and you tell us if this is a good way to close part 3 of the fellowship of TensorFlow next week.
Let me see if I can try. Daniel, please go ahead. I'll see if I can try to get Onyx to work in the meantime.
Let's go back to the. Okay. Any questions for Praful? Sorry, Praful, I cut you short too soon.
No worries.
All right, hearing none. So then we'll put the recording of this conversation as always. And for part 3, we just have these notes here, and maybe they may be your notes actually. I'm not sure.
No, I plugged them in. But Daniel, I can just walk you through what I've added, and you can probably suggest more.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just walk through it. Hold on. Yeah. So this is, I think this blog is really helpful for me. This is an AI blog for RStudio, and you frequently see deep learning models using Torch library for R and TensorFlow. TensorFlow recently became really good for R. So you see a lot of real world examples here. So I've just added this just for reading.
Mm-hmm.
This is R TensorFlow, and what I've realized is that this is a wrapper around Python. So anything that has been built on Python can be run on R and vice versa. So because it uses reticulate for serializing data between R and Python.
Right, and that also is what leads to the difficulty behind it. But go ahead.
So yeah, this is the API for anyone who needs. But the documentation is very poor. But the good news is, since all of them have equivalence in Python library, you can refer the Python library documentation. That's how I was able to figure out the basics. So people who want to spin their own R notebooks in Colab, they can click this link. I usually save them as a bookmark, so I can create because there's only this awkward way. You cannot convert your runtime from within Colab for some odd reason. But if you click this link, it will spin an R environment, and it comes with a lot of useful packages. I've added these links, but as I understand it, you won't need any of them because you can mount the drive directly from within Colab, so you won't need the drive API. But I've just added Google Cloud Storage, Google Sheets, or Google Docs, and BigQuery just in case people need them. But I don't think you'll need any of these. And then here's how you load a saved model from a previously saved model. You can load them using this. Again, there is really little to no documentation, so I'm really in the dark here. Onyx has a runtime for R. And so I believe that the one ring to rule them all is this one, Onyx. And then there are a bunch of deployment scenarios that are available, but again, we're not deploying it in our demo, but I just wanted people to have everything in the same place for deploying that. Yeah.
Then you'll be our token R expert, and you should be as lazy as possible. So load the model that was already trained and find out if you can easily use it in an R.
Oh yeah, that's not a problem. I used to use TensorFlow in R all the time, but I gave up because it's actually easier to do in Python, even though I didn't speak Python at the time.
But did you load the model trained in somewhere else, or were you also training the model?
I've never done that, only because I've always trained my own models, but I certainly can give that a shot.